Welcome, Wargamers. My name is Doug with 2+ Stuff, and I got something cool in the mail. As you may know, I am an avid Ork player in 40k, very excited about that. And if you want to follow along with my journey as I build my Green Tide full of vehicles and all kind of stuff, boys all galore, head over to Instagram, the link down below, and you'll be able to follow my progress there. Now, here's the thing. We've all seen releases like this where GW puts out a board game style product that's chocked full of models, and typically it's seen as just a great way to get models on the cheap. But I wanted to really dive into this one because, frankly, I want to be different, but also because the game is so intricate that I think it warrants a little bit of discussion. This is not just a source of models. So in this review, we're going to talk about the models that you get, because of course that's the number one thing people have on their minds, what it's like to build them, my experiences with them, talk about Speed Freaks as a standalone game, what it's like, what you get in it, because there's some stuff for 40k and Kill Team you're going to want, and then also kind of dive into what that means for the greater hobby, and kind of give my thoughts on the overall value. So of course we're going to start off with the thing that people are most excited about, the models. And so I'm going to throw some pictures up here of the ones that I had a chance to get a hold of, and we'll dive into that. So in this set you get 2 units of 3 war bikes, just like you would if you're going to order them separately. And they are existing sprues, there's no modifications to them for this game, but they do come in colored plastics, which I found very cool. One's yellow and one's red. Thematically in the game it's Bad Moons versus the Evil Suns. Of course, in this set, you also get 2 of the new Ork vehicles that were spoiled. This is the Shock Jump Dragsta, it's the yellow Formula 1 looking car, and also the Custom Boosta Blasta, which is the red hot rod looking one, which, spoiler alert, is my favorite of the 2. Now, I'll throw a picture up here right now. One thing I was really surprised by was the size of the sprue for the individual vehicles. Because here's the thing, when I first saw this kit, or these kits first kind of leaked and stuff like that, I thought it was going to be a multi-kit. I thought one kit would build either one of these vehicles because they have kind of the same low profile, just like the new trucks kind of have that new same high-rise profile in terms of like elevation off the ground, same basic shape, that kind of stuff. But they are not. They are 2 completely different sets. There's no crossing over, nothing like that. They each build exactly that one vehicle, and their sprues are massive. Now, why do I focus on the sprue size? Well, because one of the community articles that came out like 2 days ago was focused on the idea that this is going to be exclusive to this box. I have no information whether or not Speed Freaks is the only place to get those 2 vehicles. Here's the thing, the size of those sprues, I don't see them producing a lot of things that size in terms of like packaging themselves individually. So I'm not quite sure how to think about that. There's no way to cut the sprue and make it smaller, but it seems weird. I haven't seen any packaging that GW's put out where they have something of that size. But maybe they're releasing a new kind of size box to fit them. It doesn't mean that they're there or not, it was just one I wanted to comment on. Now, one thing I know Ork players are excited about, and they do a lot, is conversions, and so making custom vehicles. So I have here the Shock Jump Dragsta, and to kind of give you a sense of its dimensions, it is just exactly 2 3/4 inch wide at the base here from the bottom wheels, which are the widest ones. From the top of this fin at the bottom all the way to that front blade, it's almost dead on 5 inches. And the whole model stands about 1.5 inches exactly at its highest part, which is the base wheel at the bottom here to that top fin. And the Custom Boosta Blasta is almost identical. It has a little bit higher reach because it has a guy in a turret, but functionally the vehicle profile is almost identical. Now, one thing I want to point out here, looking back at that sprue and also at the finished product, one thing you'll notice is that this car is kind of hard to modify. By this I mean it really has a custom form fit for this exact design, as I said before. But there's a lot of customization potential in the little bits and bobs by like the mufflers and the missile rack on top and the little engine on the back. There's a lot of places to do minor modifications, but it will be difficult to do major ones like cutting off entire sections, well, because it's all one solid piece of plastic. What this really means, what I'm trying to convey, is that for your entry-level model, hobbyer who doesn't have a lot of access to heavy tools and that kind of stuff to really get the nice smooth cuts and things like that, they're going to find that converting these things and making a little bit of character by adding those little detail bits and modifications can be very easy. And for your advanced modelers who are adept at using Dremels and things like that to just slice up vehicles and make their own custom stuff, you'll be able to as well. I think in particular the gap right here in the front where the top wheels meet there, is going to be really cool, so you can extend it and things like that. There are conversion possibilities, but I think to do major modifications, you do need to be very comfortable in using some of the bigger tools. Now I'm going to throw a picture up here of something that absolutely blew my mind, and this is the terrain that comes in this set. Now, I couldn't tell from the initial photos what it was going to be like. I know that Gangs of Camorra had little paper cutout terrain, for example. These are huge, beefy plastic pieces that require absolutely zero assembly. They come in the exact shapes. You have to kind of cut out some flash from like windowsills and things like that, but nothing really, you don't glue anything all together. It just is what it is. And they are gorgeous pieces of terrain of different heights and widths and transparency, meaning things have windows, some don't, stuff like that. Now, as many of you know, I'm going to get into Kill Team the second we move, and terrain like this is absolutely perfect. Like I said, it's of variable sizes, there's windows, different heights, things like that. It absolutely is. If you want to build an Ork Kill Team board, it's kind of a must-have. It's incredible looking. But here's the thing, I say build an Ork Kill Team board, but there's really only maybe one, maybe two Ork iconography things on it. It can be used as a scrapyard for just about anything. And I didn't want to pass on this just because it's terrain, because terrain in the context of Kill Team and things like that has a lot more value, any more than it ever has before, and so it's very exciting to see some really cool looking pieces. Now, the last note in the models here I wanted to put was my actual thoughts on the building experience, because I'm someone who, I have a lot of boys who I got for cheap at garage sales, but I don't have a lot of Ork vehicles, and so this is actually a new experience for me, and obviously this is new for everyone, but I mean the actual experience of building Ork vehicles and a lot of the bigger GW kits. What I will say is that it was a stark contrast from the zero assembly terrain, looks amazing, and then the bikers who are like pretty simple. There's still kits where you have to cut off the handlebars if you want to have someone like holding a weapon, or holding the steering, I mean. But these kits, the new vehicles, I'm astounded by how many pieces they are. They each took me about just shy of an hour to build, because I do a lot of flash cleaning, and so there's just a bajillion little pieces to these guys. And so you got to really think about that. It took a lot of time. It actually took more time to build these two than any other part of this video. That being said, the directions are extremely clear, and all these pieces have nice labeled parts, and so even though you're kind of scanning the sprue because they're not in any kind of order, they're just like shattered everywhere, I did find it pretty simple. Actually, a lot of time was spent looking for parts on the sprue, but they're all clearly numbered, and it was kind of a breeze. Okay, so we talked about the models that you get, but what is the actual game itself, Speed Freaks, like? Well, here's the thing. It's kind of an amalgamation of stuff that we've seen before in a really new and exciting way. If I had to explain it in the simplest possible way, I would say it's a mashup of Warhammer 40k and like X-Wing. Basically, you assemble your team, so in this case it would be your vehicle, what they call a buggy, and then your 3 bikes, one of which is going to be a knob, and that is your army. Your opponent has an almost identical one, obviously with a different buggy, and you get 10 dice each turn. These dice can be split into cunning, shooting, and fighting. And basically how that works is you're appropriating your resource. You want to lean heavy into shooting, you put more dice in the shooting pile. More in combat, put more dice in the combat pile. All that kind of stuff. At least one of those dice has to be allocated to each vehicle for the speeding phase, so this means it actually gives them a chance to move. And so basically what you're trying to do is you and your opponent alternate moving vehicles first, whoever has initiative. I'm not going to go into how to get initiative. But when you choose a vehicle, you're going to allocate one of those dice to each of them, and then any extras you might have. And then you get to move based on movement templates, just like in X-Wing. Some movements are very easy to do, some can cause damage if you don't do them right. And as a side note here, I say it's like X-Wing in terms of moving templates, but look at the sheer number of options that you get. There are a lot of cool things to do. And then you move into the shooting phase, and each vehicle has firing arcs. Like, they'll have multiple weapons, but each weapon has an arc that it shoots out of, and so then you have to allocate your dice that you've given to the shooting phase, allocate them across your models and across their weapons, and do all your shooting. And it works very similar to X-Wing, which is where you roll a number of dice, these symbols mean hits, your defender rolls dice equal to their defense value, those symbols mean defended, and they cancel each other out as they do. So it's very simple. I'm not going to go to the nitty-gritty, but this is a very overarching view. Basically, the general mission is you're trying to kill each other. Makes perfect sense. In addition to that, there are also, what, 4, 5 campaign missions that you get, which have different objectives and things like that. One of them is just a big race where you're just trying to kill each other as you go around a track several times. So it ends up being a lot of fun. What's cool is that, unlike X-Wing, you're not dialed in with your plan ahead of time. Like in X-Wing, if you're not familiar, you take a dial and you say, this is the movement that I'm going to make based on a template. In this, you don't have to choose which of those templates you use to move until it's your turn and you choose to use that model, and you just go back and forth. So you have a lot more flexibility, and you can do multiple movements with some based on how many resources you give to that particular vehicle. My point being, in X-Wing, it's like, I pick this template, I move that direction. No ifs, ands, or buts unless you hit something. In this, if you were to load up and say I gave my boy here like 4 dice to go moving like crazy, he could back up, do a crazy turn, jet forward, turn to the left, and do all kinds of crazy maneuvers so that when my opponent goes to shoot at him, he is nowhere in their arc. There's no line of sight, nothing like that. So you can get pretty wild with how heavy you lean resources to each vehicle. And so it ends up being a game similar in concept, where you have templates and pre-decided motions and vehicles moving around, but then you tack on a bunch of really cool aspects like resource management and being able to crash into each other, because you don't really crash into each other in X-Wing, but you can absolutely smash this dude into the custom boosted blaster, and you probably should. You can do all kinds of crazy maneuvers, back up. You can drift, which is when you put a template at a weird angle, at a 45-degree angle, they drift off to the side. They can lose control and spin in a direction according to a 1d8. It adds a lot of very flavorful things that make it a very unique game. It is its own thing. I'm not saying it is X-Wing or a copy or a competition. I'm just kind of give you something to kind of a base to conceptualize with and then expand outward from. The amount of variety and options you have and resources you can do in Speed Freaks far exceeds anything that X-Wing does. The last important thing I want to touch on when it comes to the game itself is the board that you play on. We've been very confused as a community as we've tried to figure out what the game board is like, because we saw the initial pictures, which I'll put up here now, and it looks absolutely massive. And then if you're following along with some of the previews that they put out on the Warhammer community page on Facebook, someone asked, what is the actual board dimensions? And they said it's smaller than a kill team board. And so we're all looking at this going like, what are you talking about? Here's the confusion. You get this little board here that breaks off into 4 pieces. It breaks off into, I think, 16.5 by 22 inches when it's all done. And I'll put some pictures up here for you. But the thing is, you get 4 of them. Boom! And they are double-sided. They have sort of a greenish side on one and a very deep brown on the other. And so this board actually winds up being pretty darn huge when you think about it. Now, here's the reason why I can't give you an exact dimension. All of the different missions that you play have these in different configurations. One of them has it in an L shape, one of them you don't actually know the shape of the board. You just put one panel out for you, one panel out for your opponent, and then the game randomly determines what direction the race goes in. And so it is cool because it adds a lot of variety. What's also important here, because they are double-sided and because of their dimensions, this is very relevant for any kill team players, if you put 2 of these boards together, you have a kill team board, right? Just 2 of them, and they're double-sided, which means you get 2 kill team boards out of this. Because the exact dimensions of a kill team board are 22 inches by 30, these, when you put 2 together, can come up to be 22 by 33. So if you just knock off the smallest amount of measurement on each side, you have a perfect kill team board, and so that is pretty darn exciting. And transitioning to my last little point, definitely the smallest, is how to use these things in 40K. Games Workshop has already confirmed that they're all going to have profiles in 40K, and if you look at the last page or so of the build instructions that come in here, the actual profiles are in there. That's how earlier this week a bunch of leaks got out. It's because people who got these things early took pictures of those last pages and shared them online. That's how they know the profile. We don't have points yet, but the Ork Codex is fast approaching, and I'm sure it will be out there soon. Here's the thing, there's much better people to talk to about the effectiveness of Ork units and 40k in general when it comes to competitive stuff like that. What I'm just going to say is I'm really glad they included that, so that there's no point in which buying this box prohibits you or has to make you buy other stuff to start playing the game. Truthfully, this entire thing, because you get 2 fast attack vehicles and you get up to 2 fast attack of the war bikes, if you throw in some kind of leader, if you bought this and then the leader on the trike, something like that, you end up getting whatever, I can't remember, that is it Vanguard, the attachment that has all fast attack stuff. You can actually do that, and that's a lot of fun. I think it's a big value. For example, me, I'm gonna go buy another one of these boxes simply because I owned 0 fast attack stuff outside of like a few Def Coptas, I think, that I got in a trade. And so the reason of that is I now have a unit of 6 bikers and 2 vehicles. It's a great start. So now I want to kind of bring it in and talk about the value of this box kind of in conclusion. And really, we have to think about the fact that there's 2 different kinds of people who are going to buy this. New players, or people who are new to Orks, something like that, and people who've been playing Orks forever and they bleed green and what, you know, and all those people who are super dedicated. Truth of the matter is this box a good value? Well, when it comes to miniatures specifically, this box has a ton more value for people with smaller Ork collections than those with massive ones. Simply because if you have none of the models in there, like me, I used every single thing in this box and will probably grab a second one to beef that up. If you own a massive bike horde or whatever like that, the bikes don't matter much to you. You're really getting this for the terrain and the cars, and that kind of becomes up to you and how much you want them based on its, value. Part of it is we don't fully yet know if they are truly exclusive to this set or if they're going to be released later, like the AdMech Mini Knights did later on. If they are truly exclusive, then the value of it goes up. If they're going to be released later, then it's kind of more of a waiting game. But I think it's important to remember this is not just about models, and I can't articulate why I think it's so different than, say, Gangs of Camorra or something like that. The truth of the matter is, it's a fun game in its own right. Important to note that it's not Gorka Morka, and someone who loved and was passionate about that game before is not going to have the same experiences now. Also important to note that those unit profile cards, the ones that dictate all the rules for each individual vehicle, it includes ones for all of the new Ork vehicles coming out. So the one that's a big jet engine with wheels attached to it, the 2 new trucks that are coming out, even the War Boss on War Trike, all have profiles in Speed Freeks. So they're going to be compatible with this entire new release coming out. And I can't imagine that there wouldn't be like a White Dwarf publication or something that released War Scroll, I call them War Scrolls, but the cards that give you unit information for things like the truck or the battle wagon, like they just fit very seamlessly into this. I have no confirmation on that. It just seems like they give a lot of support to those other smaller games with little releases like that thrown in a White Dwarf to kind of add some fun. And it seems too perfect for that. I'm simply saying that the game can be easily expanded if you find that you'd enjoy it. In all likelihood, I'm going to buy another box of this just to beef up the units that I have here, and also because of the amazing terrain. And that's one thing I didn't really think about until I sat down to actually write the review, is that you not only get cool models for your Orks, and beefing up some units that I needed, you get really great looking pieces of terrain as well as 2 unique kill team boards. And so even if you don't like Speed Freeks, that's fine. You still get a lot of value at this if you like any other stuff that they've been doing lately. And I think it kind of adds a lot to the value. So I think I've covered everything. I gave you the dimensions of the new vehicles in case you want to do some kit bashing and conversions to make your own that are compatible with these. Talk about the models and building them, and the game itself, 40k, the value you get, kill team stuff. I mean, there's just a lot of things going on in this box, but if you have more questions, I'd love to hear them. Go ahead and leave them in the comments down below, and I'll be responding to those the next couple days very, very attentively. Thank you all so much for watching, and a huge thank you for Games Workshop for sending me out an early copy. I am incredibly grateful for the chance to review this. Thank you so much for watching, and happy wargaming. Hey Wargamers, thank you so much for watching that video. Be sure to hit subscribe and click the little bell notification icon so you're alerted to all new videos coming out.